Hello, everyone. Let's do a super quick presentation. I'm Luz and David, and we are here with Martina Paone. We are working in evolving education, which we are researching and democratizing educational practice that empower kids and youth to take control of their learning, their lives, and co-create a world with values.
Yeah, and one of the amazing chances that we have through this project is to meet with inspiring people that are creating networks and spaces to transform education. Because something that I think has impacted us personally a lot has been, while researching, that in a way the transformation of education has already happened. There are already amazing learning spaces, democratic, self-directed, empowering through change making, but they're still restricted to a few children. So that's why there's so many of us that cannot just stand still while this is the case, and are working to bring these opportunities every time to more and more people, whether it is creating new learning spaces, whether it is transforming the existing ones, or training educators in any of those fields. And Martina from Quest, quality. Maybe you can tell us a bit what the acronym is. I'm going to leave it there. But I know that Martina has been in the field of education for a long time, also running a democratic school, I believe, a nature-based space. And so we want to, first of all, get to know you, and then you can tell us a bit more about Quest and what the acronym means.
Shall I start with the acronym?
Whichever.
No, let's do later, a bit of suspense. Yes, indeed, it's a long time that I work on education, but I started from it taking from a political side, because I was working in academia, mainly in international relations and political studies. And so I was always been very much interested in the relationship between politics and education, and therefore democratic educational libertarian education. That's basically what I've been, looking at for a long time in my career. And then, I started teaching after my PhDs. I started teaching at a university, and I realized that I really touched upon the fact that there was very few motivation in my students, even though they actually were choosing their career and, apparently wanted to do that. So I started really thinking on that and trying to change academia from the within. It didn't really work. And then I started realizing that I needed to go a bit back and to look for younger ages. And that's also in the moment in which I had my children. And so I decided to open a democratic school. Once again, the political side of that was really important for me. So really to allow children to experience democracy since the very young age. But the experience lasted, I think, 6 years in Brussels. But the challenges were really, really incredible, unexpected, some expected, some not, and on several levels. And it's thanks to that experience that me and other colleagues realized that there was needs, as you were saying, to connect different realities that are bringing this change in education. So connecting among ourselves, connecting with the 99% of other teachers and children that are actually not that fortunate to have found this path of change in education, but also to connect on maybe on a national and European level, so to advocate for these different realities. And that's where Quest was born, which stands for Quality Education in Europe for Sustainable Social Transformation. So we really aim at doing a connecting. So that's the first thing. We aimed connecting pioneer realities around Europe that in a way or another are bringing change in education to a more respectful, democratic and inclusive education. But also we aim at giving a sort of resonances to them. We also do research to legitimize what some schools are doing maybe more empirically. And we are slowly starting some policy and advocacy activities mainly starting at the EU level, which seems at the moment the easiest path, and then moving to the national level.
Interesting. It's more feasible at a higher level than at a country level. That's quite interesting, because I think we have been talking. We had a conversation with Gabriel Groys, who is also part of European Education Democratic Community, and we were talking about how, at a high level, if you look at UNESCO recommendations and European recommendations, and even at the country level, we were talking at that time of Spain, kind of the wording of the policies, it looks quite encouraging. It's about empowerment and giving children a voice, learner-centered education. So kind of at the high level, people agree on these things. And when we ask teachers, and pretty much in any context, what's the best that we can do for children, most people agree that it's empower them to develop their skills, their strengths. The challenges come down when we bring down to actually what is going to happen in the classroom, in the schools. How are they going to happen? And if we have those objectives in mind, then democratic education comes as a very natural response to it. But because it's so different to what we have been used to, it's a big clash with the paradigm that we have always lived in.
Yeah, and the role models that we have seen, like we have experienced a particular way of educating, and then when going out of that way and trying different things, just per se trying new things sometimes is scary.
Yeah.
And then going against what you have learned and trying, like, I guess that trying things without having any model, it's super hard because you don't really know what to do, and then pretty much fear end up stopping you to experiment. So that change of mindset of experimenting and trying different things, I guess that is something super important to give back.
Absolutely. And we were in a gathering last week with people from university, and we asked them how can we expand this, and they share different ideas. And some of the ideas that resonated with me and that are very connected to the work that we do are with recognition, mind shift, and practical training. And that's kind of what we have aimed for in the learning expedition. Obviously, it can always be better, but it's like how we take people in this learning experience that they enjoy, to the point that it helps you to question the way that we learn, the question that we interact with each other. So there's that mind shift. You get to experience some practical tools. And also we recognize your work, because we're going to be doing experiments and in a community, so you get the chance to share. And now we want to make it more visible. We have an idea about how to make visible the experiments that people are doing, because they're super inspiring. Like last call that we had this Tuesday, one of the teachers is training with us. She's in Peru, and she mentioned that she's using assemblies, like kind of parliaments in her classroom. And she said that she showed our videos of our training to the school director, and she was supporting her on the project. And now other 8 teachers were gonna try those parliaments in their classrooms, and we were like dancing of happiness. This is finally happening. This is spreading, and it's through that inspiration, someone doing a little experiment, other people see what's happening, the change of attitude of the children.
I think you got super excited.
Yeah, maybe I got too excited. And we got frozen even as well. And then
yes, I see you frozen. Yeah, now it's working again.
Okay,
but I could hear you. Yeah.
Cool.
Anyway, my mind went away. There we are back.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Sorry, I don't know where I left it, but maybe we can leave there my little story and excitement about
Yeah, and Martina, you have been talking about that you have been doing a lot of research projects. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yes, most of this project resonates really with what you are saying now. Basically, we really started from this puzzle that you mentioned and Gabriel mentioned, that actually at the international level there is quite some understanding of the importance of putting forward a respectful education for children, one that respect their basic children rights. But then at the national level, it doesn't. So that was the starting point of many of our researchers. At the moment, we are doing a quite big research on democratic education in state schools, really with the objective of making a bridge between democratic schools and state schools. So we have 5 countries as pilots, in which 2 schools, one democratic school and one state school, collaborate and communicate, and then we really map out what are the feelings, the needs in Europe from state schools and democratic schools, and then we are really trying to now analyzing this the results. And what is really interesting, and you were mentioning as well, that there is a big need and interest from teachers to really try out democratic education tools. But at the same time, they are scared because of all the bureaucratic and systemic and legal frameworks. So what major finding there is the importance of small steps. And that's something that we really want to advocate for state school to get into this path. So this is a big part of our research. Then we are having another research also with Playa Escuela, con Gabriel Gross and Alberto de la Tuscia. It's another libertarian school in Italy, about how nature education is beneficial when you merge it with democratic education, and actually how both pedagogies can have the best of them when they are merged together. So there it's also doing field research and also interviewing all the main actors in Europe that devoted to these pedagogies. Mm-hmm. And then another part of our research is working on sociocracy, so more about, let's say, the governance level of schools, and how basically through using sociocracy, we can have schools where every voice is heard, also children's voices. And so we have, also thanks to another European project, we have a research on that, on the use of sociocracy in European schools and the needs of sociocratic schools at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's super cool. I think that is super interesting, that mixture of the nature education plus democratic education, because it kind of like these 3 levels of connection that we normally talk about, like connecting with yourself, connecting with others, and connecting with nature. And that way you have the 3 levels, because while learning in that nature, you learn how to relate to it and respect it and so on. And then while you are having democratic parliaments and talking to your colleagues, then you develop that collaboration skills and your abilities to relate to other people. And finally, in that process per se, you end up getting to know yourself a little bit more. What are your triggers and so on? So yeah, like the whole spectrum gets treated really well.
And I was curious.
Yeah, and go ahead. And even more, I mean, if you can think about how nature can empower self-directed education in an environment that is not controlled by adult, like nature, where you don't have a setting that it's already pre-established. There, it's really a place where, self-directed education can thrive. And so that's why we believe it's super beneficial for democratic education to include nature. And at the same time, looking at nature's education, it might be sometimes it's quite adult-led in most of the approaches that use like outdoor learning and forest schooling. And so could be very interesting to look at how much beneficial it is to bring democratic tools and democratic approach into that. Mm-hmm. And finally, I think what is really interesting is that most of nature schools tend to be only for children from 3 to 6 sometimes. And then when children are at 6, okay, back to class, back to the desks, behind the desk. And so if you manage to look at, most of democratic approach to ages and mixed ages and to what is learning, you could really free children from getting entrapped in a class and being able to explore nature through all over their education, but all over their life. Mm-hmm. So I think those are really critical points that we look at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no separation between learning and living and interacting with other people, and mm-hmm. So it's beautiful.
And I'm really glad that we're having this conversation with you, because we haven't spoken with that many people that have been involved as well into the politics of education and the impact that education can have in our social structures through policy changes. And I would like to hear your perspectives about what we were talking before about that kind of the high level vision is clear, but it doesn't cascade down, whether it actually happens kind of in the final implementation in the classroom, or whether there are usually some policies in between that restrict teachers in their abilities to make changes. Because most of the teachers that we work with, they're passionate, they really have an amazing empathy with children, they're vocational in what they do, but they find that even though they align with these ideals, when it comes down to how to do it, they have 2 hours a week with the children, and they have this number of topics that they need to cover, and they need to have a number at the end of the day associated with each children about their evaluation. So yeah, just to hear what's your understanding or perception of these things.
Yeah, more and more I see that the policy is changing, and when I'm saying, well, we start at the U level is because it's easier, well, it's because actually the power leads at the national level when talking about education. So let's say it might be easier for for EU commissioners to bring recommendation, but then to put them in place at the national level means legal changes, structural changing, bureaucratic changes, and curriculum changing from the university point of view. So university needs to change what they teach to future teachers. And that's, those are really quite major changes that needs to be put in place. So that's why, like with Quest, we start, let's say, trying to, first of all, make known what are the EU recommendations that more and more are looking at education as an holistic way, as a development, so not as just a cognitive, skills. So if we look, for instance, at the life competences and citizenship competences that the EU is promoting, it's fantastic how through democratic education this could be all implemented. And they are the same that's actually saying, they say that at the state level, there is a big need for alternative pedagogy to be put forward, because at the moment, traditional school system cannot really address the needs of the children, and also what are the key competences that the EU is bringing forward. So our work is to make this renewed at the national level and say, okay, that's where you have to go. And we also provide some tools, that you could use to arrive to that. The process, as I was saying, is really slow because it really entails structural changes. And but we see that some states more than other in Europe are doing slow progresses towards this. It's for a person like us that we work in education, it can be really frustrating because it's such a slow process, and so we might get this, this frustration of which, we want this to be done quick, but unfortunately, it's a slow process done in small steps. And in the countries in which there is more flexibility, it's easier to talk at the national level and provide examples of things that could be done, of, you know, a very successful example of schools that allow children decisions and the decision of what to learn and to co-management of the school. In states in which this is more difficult, I think we need to work really at the teachers level. And so trying to bring more and more positive examples and make this movement grow up. That's at least what we try to propose with Quest.
Mm-hmm. And which one will be those countries that are more flexible at the moment?
Well, being in Belgium, for instance, it's an example in which you know, there is a big flexibility and a possibility for schools to basically have a lot of freedom in their curriculum. It's not a case that the Freinet schools are public here and state schools, so you know, they are completely funded, and so I think that could be a way, and some schools tried to recognize democratic education in Belgium. We could look at Estonia, for instance. We know that there is a secondary state school that it's democratic there. And so there are these great examples. We could look at the Lycée Autogéré de Paris. So it's a self-management secondary school in Paris that exists since the 70s. So if those examples are still you know, are there and alive, they could be replicated. But there is to be an awareness raising campaign and at the national level in order for this to be spread up. And then we have also other countries in which there are laws that are allowing a curriculum change, like in Spain, for instance. Now there is a big possibilities for teachers to decide everything about their curriculum. Though education is still compulsory, and so we know that unschooling it's not allowed. In Germany, it's a similar example. So, you know, there are a lot of novelties and a lot of also example of very revolutionary schools that are there and needs to be helped, recognized, so that they can thrive, and then they can also bring other schools to, you know, to be open and successful.
That's fantastic. And yeah, we truly believe in into that power of sharing those examples, because that's really what has inspired us to see those examples live and thinking this has to happen in more places. So I'm sure if more and more teachers know about these things, have the chance to meet with these people, and not just about the tools, but about the personal experiences of how your life changes when you stop being a guardian or a transmitter of information to someone that is there to facilitate meaningful learning and meaningful development of essential life skills, like your role in society, how you see yourself, how the family see yourself as a teacher, changes completely.
And also the interaction with the learners, that's a massive change. Like, yeah, at the end, like the core thing is actually the relationship, not the objectives of the result that you're gonna get, but building that. And at the end, you end up more happy because those relationships are beautiful, and that connection with the people is what motivates us many times.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have more questions about sociocracy, and you I don't know how many research you're doing at the same time, but it seems like so many stuff. Then it's fantastic. And we also know that you are doing a lot of work in sociocracy, also sharing the results, and sharing with more people how to implement sociocracy in schools. So could you tell us a bit more, how can be sociocracy used in schools?
Sure. So the sociocracy, it's an Erasmus project that we started with the Sociocratic Centrum in Austria. So it's a center to promote sociocracy. we departed from the idea that sociocracy could be really a meaningful tool, not only for self-organization, but really to allow a space in which children could decide, and so, you know, really decide about take responsibility about their own learning. We practice sociocracy in the school in Belgium, and we have seen many, at the same time, many schools struggling because when they wanted to implement an horizontal governance, but they didn't have tools, but most schools struggle a lot. And we have the human factor kicking in, and we have discussion, and we have problems. And so for me, sociocracy, it's really a helpful tool in this sense. And so that's the reason that pushed us in really doing this research and seeing how is the situation in Europe. So we started our research. We did a lot of questionnaires to sociocratic and non-sociocratic schools and interviews. And then what we realized is that what is the most important thing is that all the sociocratic schools that answered, I think we have like 26 sociocratic schools that were that replied to us. Everyone was extremely happy and excited about sociocracy. So no one was like, we tested and we want to come back. So that's the really most important thing. And so for us, this is the most, you know, the most relevant data that, you know, cannot be underestimated. At the same time, we really realized that it's a niche. I mean, it's a very small word, and sometimes we give things for granted when we know about something, and we think, okay, everyone knows sociocracy, but at the end, we realized that all the non-sociocratic schools that we contacted, most of them didn't reply to us, and we are talking about hundreds and hundreds of schools, because we didn't share the same lexicon, we didn't share the same understanding of words. So we gave for granted what's sociocracy, they didn't, absolutely. So, and this was really a communication gap that we realized it was really big. And so we need really to, in order to reach traditional schools, we need to start having the same lexicon sometimes and having the same understanding. So that's a very important result for us in really to see how we can arrive to those schools. And then we saw that, I think that the third important result is that despite the different kind of schools that responded to us, so we had a very small school of 10 children, schools with 70 children, public schools that applied sociocracy with 200, 300 children, so, and private, public, Waldorf, democratic. So despite the different heterogeneity of the schools, we had similar trends in the understanding of sociocracy, in understanding of benefits and challenges. Okay. So that's another really interesting data that we managed to gather. And so when we analyze what are the benefits, it's very clear. Like everyone was very clear about saying what are the benefits, and they are really, I could say they are really connected with the different circles. So when you structure an organization with sociocracy, you tend to have different circles. Most of the schools have the children's circle, the teachers circle, if we want to call them teachers, and then they have the management circles and the parent circles. Like those are the main actors. And so we could see benefits and challenges for each one of those, starting for the children, which is, I think most of the schools say that it's absolutely amazing to practice sociocracy with children, even though not all the sociocratic schools apply sociocracy with children. So that's an important thing that it needs to be noticed. Is not that sociocratic schools means democratic schools. So that's something that, you know, sometimes not everyone is aware of. Actually, most of the schools were only practicing sociocracy with adults. And so the domains of the children was like really tiny and almost zero for some. But the results was saying that the larger the domain of the children, so the larger the sphere of decision of the children, the larger was the sense of belonging and the sense of purpose and the sense of connection of the children with the school. So that's, I think, very interesting what we could find. And then if we think about the other actors, it was the teacher's role was really clarified in the research, in the sense that teachers were feeling also more empowered and therefore had a better connection with the school, a better sense of belonging and collaboration with the rest of the team. And when talking about the management sides, there was also a sense of the fact that things were getting done. So it was not just one person saying, and then no one would care, but because the decision was sharing, there was a sense really of things being more effective. What was probably more complicated as a role is the parents as an actors, who felt definitely that in sociocratic organization they would feel more heard as well, and so more part. But it's also one of the main challenges to get parents on board in this kind of structures. And of course, I would touch upon the challenges that were also very, very clear and identifiable. Definitely, challenges were not very much connected with children. So that's really important. It seems if you talk with schools that practice sociocracy with children, they would all say, well, it works very well with children, like taking decision with constant decision making. It's very easy with children. With adults, nightmare, but with children, it's really easy. And so we didn't find many challenges in that sense, but definitely several challenges about the human factor, both with the teachers, with parents and management, in the sense of problems in communications, problem in when the more you get horizontal, the harder it is to take harsh decisions, even if you have sociocratic tools. And so this was creating a lot of stress. And of course, the time, it's a major problem as well, because you need a lot of time at the beginning when you implement sociocracy, and this time it's normally taken voluntarily by teachers. So this was a big problem. Before having a good implementation, it would take a lot of time and energy. And as I said, it's also the problem of parents, because it's difficult when they enter in a school organization to have a clear role defined. So if they enter and they do something, they should know if they're acting as a parent or if they're acting as assistant in, finances or administration, because sometimes, parents do have different roles. And so this was really one of the key cause of stress and challenges in these schools. And I think that's more or less an overview of the research. Now, I don't know if I gave a bit for granted what sociocracy is. I don't know if we should touch upon this.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good place where we should have started by defining what sociocracy. Who wants to give it a try? Well, I guess you have a specific definition that you're trying to promote as well, to have a common understanding.
Well, there is a definition of sociocracy, so I don't promote it. It's just the classical sociocracy method is just a governance method that promotes effectiveness and at the same time transparency through 4 principles. And so the first principle is the consent decision making. So all the decisions are done if there are no paramount objection. The second principle is the working in circles where decisions are taken into different circles that create the organization. The third principle is the double link among circles, so that permits the shared of information through a delegate and representative of coordinator. And then the fourth principle are the open elections. So it's basically electing role through consent decision making.
Mm-hmm.
So just so everyone is clear, because sometimes we give things for granted, and
Absolutely.
And something I guess that I like to add on the consent part is the cool part of, like, normally we tend to say, oh, we all agree or don't agree, and then we have to, like, there is these differences between democracy, consensus, and with consent we introduce the range of tolerance, and that for me was like, wow, this is craziness, because it gives a lot of space for experimentation and to see if you want to try something. Like, maybe you wouldn't say, like, oh, I agree or I don't agree, but then I'm willing to try. That opens up a range there that there is possibilities to play and to find solutions that work for everyone. And that blew my mind. I have to say, for me, it was like, wow, because maybe someone was really like, no, I'm not gonna do that, I don't agree. But then if you frame a proposal in such a way that you ask, are you willing to try? Then people might be more open to give it a try and to see how it works. So that thing, I think, that is super cool about consent.
And it reminds me what you mentioned about the human factor, which for me, all of it is kind of human factor, but it's the fact that we are not used to any of these things. We can say those principles, we can use the word consent, but when it comes to expressing our thoughts, very few of us are able to differentiate an observation from a judgment. For instance, to say something that we disagree with, or to be able to truly listen to someone, not to respond, but to understand what the person wants to share. So there I really agree on that change of mindset, because if we really embody that respect for everyone, that importance of listening, and even understand deeply the importance of autonomy and having a choice when it comes to your own education, for your own development and for development of amazing life skills like self-confidence, creativity, critical thinking, then if we really ingrain that, I think the tools will be used whenever they are needed, but then all our actions will be based on those values. And I think that's something that can permeate all our spaces in where we're in. But yeah, it's a process that we need to go through and experience it. And for instance, for us, we do trainings to share these skills, but mostly the values. It's such a big challenge, because a good part of it is to lose the control. That was our last newsletter, where people finally are kind of changing our program to their own needs. But that's very scary for someone that has worked a lot. We have worked a lot on designing our program and so on. But now they're saying that they want to do the things differently. And that's amazing, because for most people, even though we want to encourage selection and choice and so on, for most people, when you give that choice, we don't really know what to do with it, because we have never been used to
taking that responsibility.
So even we're working with facilitators of self-directed learning, with unschooling communities, and then we give them all these tools and choices and ask them, which one do you want to look at? And they start from point A, B, C, D, like they are not jumping to whatever is needed for them. And we had that conversation in our last community call. And
it's hard. We have not experienced that different way of learning, which you have ownership of your own learning. And I really like the part that you were saying about the benefits, that sharing responsibility. I think that it is what makes people to own the space, and that's what you want. That like schools to be a community of people that are actually experimenting with society per se. No, they are creating their own little society, and it's not separated of the rest of the world, but there is all the time interaction and feedback between each other, and that's beautiful, because that way learning centers are not restricted to the four walls of a classroom, but it's open to everyone. And yeah, that's definitely a good way to start changes.
Yeah, it's quite an old concept if you think about. I think UNESCO already in the 90s was thinking about the how would school look like in 20 years, and one of the options was like, oh, but actually school should just probably slowly be integrated in the world. And so yeah, we might have learning hubs, but they would just diffuse it and in connection with the world. So we actually have one project, it's called Outside, and it's really about that. It's about connecting schools with local community, and then through learning hub trying to find solution to community challenges, and so how children could really, be actors in the community and go in the community, and how the community can enter into school as well. So
yeah, there is a sentence we met Jose Luis Campos, was it? From Benposta. This is an organization in Colombia that it's helping and supporting kids that are being displaced by terrorism and so on. And he said, childhood is not a waiting room. And it's like that. Like, we cannot expect, not like, we don't make any decisions and we follow everything that people told us that is the good thing until we are 18, and now you're free and now you can choose. It's like, no, it's not a waiting room. They need to have levels of empowerment, and they need to take control of their learning and lives.
And to give a bit more of context of Benposta, the way that they support children that have been exposed to conflict and violence is to actually allow them to manage peacefully their living community, how their laundry works, how they're going to clean the space, how their school works, pretty much everything in the community that they are there. They have their parliament at different levels, and it's something that you will never imagine. Like, people have been exposed to conflict, to violence, to armed conflicts, where some members of the family died and things like this. But through this restoration process, they come to be able to deal with conflict in a peaceful manner and with their lives, and probably better than most of us that haven't experienced one of those spaces where we are really empowered.
Yeah.
And something that you said was very meaningful for me was about the vocabulary. And because we keep finding that challenge of communication in both ways. Like, sometimes it comes from people in alternative education. So I remember that we had a sentence in our website that said, empower kids to take control of their learning. And someone told me that kids was the meaning word, and that the right word was children, for instance. And then also on the opposite side, when talking with I don't know, anyone in a traditional education context, you cannot mention words like freedom-based education or alternative education or unlearning. Those are kind of taboo words. And we always find ourselves in this middle space where it's like we want to be the translators so that everyone understands each other, but it's so tough.
I think one very interesting thing is in nonviolent communication, and they say, but do you communicate to connect or to correct? And I find that in some alternative education movement, there is this willingness of correcting each other, and I'm actually more clever than you in this sense, or more advanced than you. And for me, those are traps that we really need to try to escape as much as possible. At the end, words are to connect, and so we need to use them just to connect. And as we were saying, it's tough. It's not easy to bring alternative education, respectful education, and all realities that are doing this struggle every day, okay, because they are doing an antagonist work. And so if even among ourselves we start correcting, it's a no-go. So I find in some academic environment there is this tendency, but I think we really need to aim for a common goal in this sense, and collaborate together.
Yeah. And I understand where it comes from. Like, I respect people that have been fighting, kind of rowing against the current, and then to be able to row against the current and do something like democratic-based education in a country where that's really rare or no one even knows about it, you really need to become stubborn at some point, or really believe in what you're doing. So then it's hard to be flexible and being able to adapt. Okay, it's okay if there's no parliament in the school, but as far as so I understand this. It's hard because to do things that are not the mainstream, you have had to have a really strong conviction in your life.
I guess that also something interesting there is to move away from debating who is right, but that having a dialogue and a conversation and making questions from curiosity, trying to understand the other person, and pretty much at the end we will agree in that we probably want the best for children. Then the way we want that might be different, but having those things in common in order to start having that conversation, and just, we cannot convince anyone to do the things that we want them to do, but we can role model, and we can share our views, which is, I mean, that not trying to push onto others, but just sharing and showing curiosity also from their point of view. That will help to not like polarizing and end up separated and disconnected.
Yeah, and this is possible, by the way. I think for everyone listening to us, this is possible. Like, at the moment, we've got about 70 people from 20 countries, from traditional schools to unschooling families, going through facilitators, people in Montessori schools. So and even people in NGOs of education, quite a broad range, founders of new schools. And somehow we've managed to develop this community, and it's not by not setting up what's the right thing to do, but asking questions and allowing people to express themselves, and then inviting them to do experiments. As you said, those little steps, each person has to decide what's possible in their context and what experiment they can do, and share that with the rest of the community so that we can learn from each other's experiences. Sometimes the question of an unschooling father about how to develop portfolios can be an inspiration for a traditional school about how to start doing evaluations in a way that is not just based on an exam. That happened in the last call, for instance.
So there are possibilities to communicate always with respect and tolerance and curiosity. I think that the curiosity part, keeping that questions and that willingness to learn from each other and to share is a really good mindset to see what happens.
Well, at the end is what we preach for children, right? It's what we preach, that they could keep being curious. And so if we don't, what's the model we are showing? And so this is connecting with what David, you were saying. It's so hard, and the human factor, and trying to unlearn what we have been taught. And that's exactly this process of being humble and put ourselves in discussion always, and sometimes being stubborn and being anchored on just our truth is not beneficial, not even for us, and not for the broader movements that we are trying to bring forward.
Yeah, coherence is like the coherence. That's the magic word. Like, if we need to be coherent in what we say, what we think, and what we do.
And also makes our lives easier, even though it's a challenge initially, but then it makes things a lot easier when that coherence is across our life.
I'm gonna say there are some people watching. If you have any question, it's the right time to make it.
Yep.
We have 5 more minutes.
Oh, well, so
I have a question.
Okay.
go ahead.
What will be your next webinar?
So in the next one, we're actually going to interview someone that is taking our program, and it's Claire Evans, and she's the Chief Learning Officer. That's a super cool title to have, of a School of Humanity. And this is an international high school that is focused on life skills and the global development goals. So they learn through projects such as water, the restoration of the water in the ocean, or how to reach Mars, kind of this kind of big endeavors, or social justice through the internet, I don't know. And then teams through around the world, because it's fully online, work on these topics and with mentors in different areas. And so we're looking forward to hear more about their new curriculum, because what they say is that they are developing a curriculum for the 21st century, and mostly focus on those projects and learning by doing.
Cool.
I'm looking forward.
Yeah, it's gonna be exciting. And then the next one, we have one in Spanish, because most of the ones we have done recently have been in English, and it's gonna be with Ashoka, Mexico, and Central America, and two organizations that they have selected, from Share Foundation and Via Educación, and they have good practices for change-making empowerment, and actually they're about assemblies and about empathetic listening. So we're going to hear about those two good practices that they are promoting in schools in Mexico. Oh, and maybe just something that it's about to happen for us, and in case you have some suggestions, is talking about research. We have been a long while now researching only through our laptop, and now finally we're going to research again on the move. So we're going to pack our bags and go to two countries this June, to Egypt and the UK. So through Ecoversities Alliance is actually supporting us and sponsoring us in part of this in this travel journey. So in the UK, for instance, we're planning to go to Summerhill School, to the self-managed college, the new school in London, to some of these pioneering institutions, to see what we can learn from them, interview their founders, facilitators, and gather more insights to inspire more people with their messages. And in Egypt, we're just coordinating with some people that run agile learning centers, people that have been working on community building and discussing what democracy and empowerment means in a country that has had lots of authoritarian governments. So we're gonna have lots of cool conversations there. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. If anyone has any connection or some projects that that would be fantastic.
Yeah, we're right now making the agenda and filling every day with some meeting.
Super packed, but
good luck. I will think about possibilities and connection and write you down.
Fantastic.
Thank you. And for people watching this, you might be interested in the next EUDEC Congress that's happening in Bulgaria.
That's true.
In Sofia, the first week of August. We're actually going to be there finally in one of these gatherings in person.
Meeting people in person, not by Zoom. We are going to escape the squares of Zoom, the walls are compacting.
We will see each other there then.
Fantastic.
We are going to present the results of the research on democratic education in state schools, and we are also going to screen small documentaries that we made in Tallinn as Suvemai School.
Awesome, yeah. Super
would be
inspiring
nice.
what they're doing in Suvemai.
Yeah. Well, any words to end the conversation or to keep it going? A question to throw out?
For me, Alliance. I think that you're doing something very meaningful, and this is creating a platform for alliances, and we really need to work together to scale the impact of this transformation so it reaches more people.
Yeah. The words that stay with me is share responsibility in that process. Yeah.
And with you, Martina?
Yeah, for me, it's also keeping this conversation going. It's more a sentence than a phrase, but I feel the more I'm talk with you, the more I'm curious about what you do and what your next steps, and I feel like it's very important that we keep going and conversating and bringing the discussion together and see how together we can, you know, have a bigger impact on what we really are working together to reach.
Yep. Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. So let's do that. Let's look for a time for our next conversation. I'll send you some options. Looking forward to meet you in person.
Yes.
Yes, this summer.
Yeah. And thank
Unless
you.
you come before, I live in Brussels, halfway in Brussels and halfway in Italy. So if you come in one of those two countries, let me know.
Okay, fantastic. And thank you very much for this conversation. I have found it really insightful also.
Yeah, and it fills me with energy to know that this is happening, that there's the research and that there's advocacy happening, so that I can cascade down to more countries and more schools know about this.
Thank you guys for having me here.
Awesome.
Bye.
Have a nice night.
Ciao.
Bye bye.